Sukhi Hotu, and welcome to Buddhist Mahavira's Facebook page. We are going live this evening from our BMV Dhammadana series. And this evening we have a very interesting topic that we will be discussing, something new which we have not ever, I think, discussed. That is using the body to experience the Dhamma. And to share his knowledge with us and to explain what this title means, we have with us Bhante Dr. Chandana from Hawaii, USA, who will join us this evening to share the Dhamma with you. I'd like to invite Bhante Dr. Chandana, to join us in the studio. Good evening, or rather, very good morning to you, Bhante. I know it's 2:30 a.m. in Hawaii at the moment, and we're so glad that you are here to join us this evening to share your Dhamma with us, your Dhamma knowledge. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Bhante Chandana is a very regular speaker here at the BMB Dhammadana series. Bhante is always very gracious in accepting our invitations to give the Dhamma, share the Dhamma with us. And for those of you who are not familiar with him, let me quickly read his profile, and then we will get straight into the Dhamma talk this evening. Now, Bhante Dr. Chandana is a bhikkhu and a student of the Dhamma for over 35 years. While teaching the Dhamma, while teaching the Dhamma for over 2 decades, Bhante Chandana has a doctorate in Buddhist ministry, as well as degrees in psychology, marriage and family counseling, and comparative religions. Bhante Dr. Chandana was born in Beirut, Lebanon, to an Armenian family, and during the 17 years Lebanese civil war as a child, he was seriously injured. This near-death experience, including the symptoms of PTSD and the physical disabilities incurred, led to the development of a keen interest in his mind to gain a better understanding of life's true purpose. And he later came to appreciate the Four Noble Truths as taught by Lord Buddha, especially given the constant presence of death, suffering, and impermanence at every corner of his life in Beirut. In 1995, he found his way to the College of Buddhist Studies, where he met the late Venerable Dr. Havanpola Ratnasara, who introduced him to the Theravada Buddhist tradition, and he became his preceptor, giving him the name Chandana. Since then, he has been granted numerous recognitions, including that of Master of Dharma. It was Venerable Dr. Ratnasara Mahanaikatero who encouraged Venerable Dr. Chandana to start teaching the Dhamma over 23 years ago, when he was still an Upasika, a lay Buddhist. In addition to his academic and applied background in the Dhamma and Buddhist studies, Bhante Dr. Chandana has an extensive background working with patients as a clinical psychotherapist, having completed his degree and training in psychology and marriage and family therapy, while also being licensed in the state of California, USA. Thus, in addition to being a university professor, Bhante Dr. Chandana has worked as a mental health therapist, specializing in the areas of mindfulness, relationship, health, anger management, trauma, and PTSD. Bhante Dr. Chandana has also just launched a book called Buddhist Mindfulness and Lifestyle that has been published and is made freely available by the Buddhist Mahavihara for free distribution. To this end, Bhante Chandana is also currently translating this book or these works into Armenian. Without much ado, now I'd like to invite our speaker this evening, Bhante Dr. Chandana, to share with us his knowledge and to explain to us how to use the body to experience the Dhamma. Bhante?
Yes. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa buddhaṃ saranam gacchāmi dhammaṃ saranam gacchāmi sanghaṃ saranam gacchāmi. Welcome to all listeners and viewers, and thank you, Brother Leslie and the Greater Buddhist Mahavihara for having me join you again to share some Dhamma. This is an interesting time period that we are living through. As we all know, it's been over 2 years that our species has been undergoing tremendous stress. I think the word stress might be a little bit downplaying the intensity that we have been experiencing as a world population. The topic for today, which is to use the body in order for us to access the Dhamma, is one that has been very close to my heart and my life. As Brother Leslie was just reading parts of my bio, where the presence of difficulties in life, the circumstances and the conditions in life presented major obstacles, to say the least, and also an avenue, a jumping board, a springboard into taking things a little bit more seriously when it comes to evaluating our own life. One of the things that happens in life is we forget the most basic thing, and that is the two legs that we're standing on, or the body that we're inhabiting, the eyes with which we are looking at the world, the ears that we are using to hear what's coming in, and all the rest of the six sense doors, what Lord Buddha called salayatana, to take in all this world. But through what? Through this body. Everything valuable that we experience it through the body. But for some reason, we always seem to forget that we have a body. Until, that is, something happens. Something happens that jolts us, that shakes us. Whether it's, for example, when you burn your hands while cooking or something, or you stub your toe somewhere, and all of a sudden, that toe becomes alive for the first time in a long while. And the attention goes there. Or when you have a toothache, suddenly, as if that becomes your whole body, your whole life. In fact, nothing else takes precedent at that moment and takes more of an importance in your life. If it is that crucial, how is it possible that we forget to be cognizant of the body? Now, I jump in directly into the crux of the matter, as you can see, because what I am inspired by is what Lord Buddha constantly talked about in reference to Sangvega, which is the need, this sense of urgency, the sense of urgency with life. And one of the best, if not the best, way to anchor ourselves in the sense of urgency is through the body. But why is it that important? Well, we can go back to the Satipatthana Sutta. I just recently finished the Mahasatipatthana Sutta exploration with students, and I dedicated 3 weeks to cover it, 3 separate occasions. And it's a beautiful sutta because of many aspects that are that can easily be seen and tasted by us, given its relevancy to the times that we're living in. And what I mean by this is the insistence of Lord Buddha to start with the body, to begin with the body. First, of course, he starts with the breath, the in and out breathing, the anapanasati portion. And we all know that. Most of us have come across it. And now, even if you're not a Buddhist, you have heard something about mindfulness of breathing, etc. But then Lord Buddha doesn't stop there. He takes it to the 4 positions or postures of the body. Now, we don't have to be sitting and meditating. We don't have to be even meditators to taste the Dhamma. Now, when some people hear this, they might be shocked. And how could you, Bhante, say that, But not all of us are meditators, let's face it. And but Lord Buddha's own audience, the people who were coming to listen to him, the countless people who have come and listened to him over the course of 45 years of his tutelage, of his teaching, they were not meditators, all of them. But they came to hear, and Lord Buddha was superb in his ability to see and gauge as to where and how. Where is this person coming from, and how can this person be benefited? The common denominator in all of them is the body. Even in the case of the devas, who don't have a physical body per se, but nevertheless, the body's importance is always there, something that we take for granted. Now, we look around today and we see an unstable world. 2 years ago, they presented us with this situation of this major physical, biological hazard, disease, whatever you want to call it, that everything got arrested. Everything was pulled into a full stop. And ever so often, we get something new, the flavor of the month or the year or a couple of years. And now we have many people worried around the world about what will happen to the world, what will happen to our future given the global situation. War, and everyone is now almost normalizing this term, World War III or something, as if it's something to be taken lightly. Such a word. But what that does is it traumatizes us. Now, whatever we experience, we end up experiencing it or pushing it through the funnel, through the bridge, through the pathway of the body. So long as we're alive, that is, in this body. So whether it was the fear that we have been going through for the last 2 years around the world, the physical damage, and the presence of the menace or the threat of being damaged, the threat of losing the body, of getting sick, that itself is powerful trauma. That itself also causes, it doesn't stay as just merely a physical phenomenon. It doesn't stay as a bodily symptom, to use a clinical term, but it takes the shape of affecting and infecting our thoughts and our feelings. So now we're talking about the psychological impact. And these two don't stay there in a vacuum. They spread. They spread into our families, and they spread into society. And then we start to look at others who are thinking like us. And that is exactly what we have. We have a lot of people, about 8 billion of us, thinking the same way. How? Remember the trauma of the body? You don't have to be sick in order for you to be traumatized, bodily or psychologically. Just the fear of it is plenty of damage. And it lasts a long time, and it can also be carried multi-generationally. That means if you have children who are alive or about to be born, or you're about to raise them, they also get a taste of that, if not get a worse situation happen to them. So physical, psychological, societal now, and we are talking also temporally. generational trauma. For example, some children today, in fact, most children, I would say, who have been forced to look at their parents and others like them, their peers, through a mask, not being able to see the lips moving, are having the disability in speech impediments, basically, inability to enunciate and say words properly. Why? Because they have become disabled because of a lack in perceiving how the world functions. That's another form of trauma. That's another form of becoming handicapped or disabled in our capacities. Well, how is that related to the Dhamma? Well, in every way. In order for us to taste the Dhamma, there needs to be an appreciation of our physical existence. That's why Lord Buddha always said, the Dhamma is found here within this fathom-long body. My arms are long, so I can't fit it in the screen. But basically, in this fathom-long body is where you find the Dhamma, Lord Buddha says. There is a sutta from the Anguttara Nikaya, the numerical discourses of Lord Buddha. And in it we have, it's in the Book of Fours, I believe. I translated it, and so that's why I remember it. It is Sutta number 45, if I'm not mistaken. And it is the Rohitassa Sutta. Rohitassa was a deva, a divine being who approaches Lord Buddha early in the morning, around this time, I guess, because he would normally see the devas approaching, asking for instructions around this time when human beings were quiet. And there was peace. So anyhow, the Deva Rohitasa asks, he says, Bhante, in my past life, I had the abilities to fly through the sky. And I went from one galaxy to the next looking for the end of the universe. And in the process, he never found it, and he died. And he asked basically, Lord Buddha, is there an end to the universe? And he says, Rohitasa, no matter how fast you travel, for however long, it's impossible for you to come to the end of the world. Now, interestingly enough, Lord Buddha also adds that unless the person comes to the end of the world using the body, the fathom-long body, then there can never be an end to the world. I'm paraphrasing very loosely, by the way, which on the surface might seem paradoxical. But what he was trying to say is this, in a nutshell, for the average person to understand. If we want to find comfort and sukha, which is the opposite of dukkha, then we need to start from somewhere that is concrete, that we can relate to, that we can see and appreciate and understand. Something that we are always using and applying and living through, meaning the body. Some people think that they have to punish the body. Some people think that they have to push themselves out into some kuti, some hut, some tent, somewhere in the jungles, or live alone necessarily, in order for them to taste or live the Dhamma. The Dhamma is not like that. Buddhism as such is not a religion like that. It is based on concrete empirical evidence. It is based on the person's experiential reality, something that there's no denying. Remember that toe that you hit by accident? It shakes you into reality. That urgency, that samvega, can allow us to really penetrate the Dhamma. Now, when I say penetrate the Dhamma, what do I mean? Or the samvega, what is the urgency about? People who have been taking their lives for granted suddenly have become glued, so obsessed with keeping themselves healthy at the cost of their humanity, at the cost of other things that they have been working and making money for and trying to um, get educated, etc., for its own promotion, but never looking at it. It's like the invisible or the elephant that is in the room that no one wants to talk about. And that is the body. There's a story I think I might have mentioned once here. And there was a farmer who had 100 donkeys. And so every morning he would get up and he would count those 100 donkeys. One day he gets up and he's counting the donkeys and he's getting 99, not 100, 99 only. There's one missing. So he starts worrying and he starts thinking, my neighbors must have stolen one of them. And he goes and is upset and he wants to start a fight and he's even ready to kill someone because how dare they steal my donkey? So the neighbors come trying to help and resolve the situation. And they see how, well, he's perplexed. So they say, okay, so let's count with you. So they start to count as well the number of donkeys that are in the field. And they get 100. He counts again, he gets 99. And they turn to him with a sly glance and they say, did you count the donkey that you are sitting on? He didn't. And that was the donkey that we are sitting on all throughout our lives, but we're never attentive to it. And that is the body until it gets sick. Now, either way, the body is going to get old. If we are lucky enough to live that long, it will get sick and it will die. I know sometimes some students or listeners get shocked, but I say, I'm sorry, but were you thinking that you're going to get out of here, this thing called life, alive? And then they say, no, 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 of course not, Bhante, but what? But what? So what I'm presenting to you here is this premise, this approach. Let us use this body. Let us use even these difficult, very difficult time periods that we're going through. Probably it's more difficult than our ancestors, our parents. As Brother Leslie was saying, I lived through 17 years war in Lebanon when it was really bad. And it's almost a lifetime, 17 years. So that can traumatize a person. And I was injured also physically. And I had to teach myself how to walk again. When the doctor said you cannot walk normally again, but I was able to teach myself how to walk and even run. Now, that is a quality that we all have within us. To look at difficult times, but not to give up, and also to find light at the end of the tunnel. Because of the tunnel, suddenly light has a different value. So that's what I'm trying to say. Many of us live, some of us come from Buddhist families, many of us come to the Dhamma later in life with a deeper appreciation. And some of us, like myself, come from different religions, different background, because we see the beauty of the Dhamma, because of the relevancy to life and its significance. And that is the point where Lord Buddha was always coming to help the person to identify this extremely short lifespan that we have. There were time periods where we see in the texts, in the suttas, how human beings lived for about 20,000 years. 20,000 years. The sila that they kept, the precepts, the ethical lifestyle they had was impeccable, which helped them to live longer. And all the other conditions helped them to do so. Now, it's not about that. What it is just to draw some comparison as to how low we have dropped because of our lack in sila. Because of our lack in sila. And what we have been using it as an excuse is the world around us, the situations. People, for example, in different parts of the world are struggling with a lack. Suddenly they came up with a war, and suddenly, from one day to the next, the energy, the resources, the fuel just dropped. Well, we are in an abundant world. We have all these resources. Somehow, we don't have these resources. That is how they are convincing human beings. And now we start fighting amongst ourselves. And now we add another layer of psychological and emotional trauma. Meanwhile, what's happening? Life is being pulled from under our feet, as it were. Lord Buddha said, Anicca, Dukkha, Anatta. Anicca, the impermanency of life. It's happening. And the best example, the best television, if you will, the best demonstrable, the demonstrated factual reflection of these principles of impermanence, for example, is found in the body. Is found in the body. So let us remember Lord Buddha's statement that if you want to taste the Dhamma, you have to use this body. Now, how do we use the body? Most of the time, because we're living in an unstable world, we have unstable minds. And what that means is we are looking at the body and we're trying to save it, and we don't even know why we're trying to save it. Of course, when you sit down with a person, they will use some conventional or relative, things, values that they hold dear. They say, well, I want to be living long to see my grandkids, or when you dig deep enough, they just want to live long so they can enjoy more pleasures of life and have less of the painful ones, as Bhante Punnaji used to say. Okay. A rat's life is equal then to ours. A dog's life is equal to ours. There's no difference. I don't see a difference then. Maximization of pleasure, minimization of painful. The Lord Buddha recognized that. And all those individuals who have seen the Dhamma have also seen the importance of the body to access something deeper. Now, to access something deeper means that we must first look down at our feet and look at the world around us and have a deeper appreciation of what is what. One thing that I noticed within these 2 years is people have lost their sense of humanity for the sake of saving their body, their health. They've been losing the sense of decency towards each other, the empathy, the compassion, the Brahma Viharas that we practice, Metta, Karuna, Mudita, Upekkha, they've just become lip service in a sense. It's like an empty shell of what it used to be. Because the person has forgotten to be kind. If I'm not kind to you, that means I definitely am not kind to myself. If I'm inimical or aversive or hateful towards you, that means I have the same attitude towards me, because that is where I get my practice. So, if I need to have a better relationship with you, with the society at large, with the world, with the environment, I need to check my attitude with myself. And what better place to start than the body? Now, to do this, we can start with the breath. It's not boring. I was just mentioning in an earlier retreat I was giving with students how when I would be in a clinical setting and I would have patients come, and the patient might be very anxious, distressed, or sad, or depressed, and they are on the verge of breaking down. One of the first places that I start with is the breath. After I made them feel calm and safe in that environment, with a softer voice, connecting, empathetic approach, all these things, where the person doesn't feel like they're alone in this whole world. with that pain. Then I would guide them through the body, meaning sometimes I would use just the sensations. What is the most loudest thing that you're experiencing right now in your body? They would say, my breathing in my chest. I say, okay, let's start with that. Can you feel the texture of your skin against the clothing? How your chest is pressing against the clothing? Or can you watch? Let's watch the belly going up and down. Or just the breath. Or how your body feels on the seat or your back feels against the chair. So as the person is doing that, they are removing themselves from the psychological, traumatic, constantly coming up with newer and more devastating, more horrendous ideas as to what is happening or what is going to happen that is terrible. So you're pulling the person out of that and you're putting them in the body where we have reality take place. See, we believe our thoughts more than we believe our experiences of reality, of the body. We don't have the body. We don't occupy the body normally. Normally. If we did, we would call that mindful living. But we don't. Why? Because we're always dreading what could happen in the future. So as the person is coming back into the body, occupying it, suddenly I would notice the breathing go slower and slower and slower until their facial muscles relax. And I asked them to open their eyes, etc. And I asked them, how, if from a scale from 0 to 10, 0 being you're completely calm, 10 being extremely anxious or depressed, where were you when you first came in to see me today? They would say, oh, I was at an 11. From a scale from 0 to 10, they were at an 11 or a 9 or a 10. And I would ask them, where are you now? And this is only happening within a few minutes, 4 minutes, 6 minutes. And they say, oh, I guess I'm at a 2 on that scale, or a 1 or a 0. See what happened? You just gave the person a glimpse of release. One of the words for nibbana is release that we use in English. In Pali, we can say vimutti or vimokha. Nibbana is another form of it. Or nirodha, the ending, the cessation. Of what though? Release from what? Dukkha. Dukkha. Dukkha is not something found in suttas. They're not something that you find in some Dhamma sharing or something like this. No, it's not found in a retreat. Dukkha is found in the body, just like Sukha is found in the body. So we have 2 years of dukkha, basically, that we are allowing it to go to waste. And that's a shame, because many people have died, many people will die. I mean, that's the nature of the body. That's the nature of the body. So Lord Buddha's urgency has always been to look at this life and not take it for granted, and start using this body to access deeper and calmer states of mind. Because you will not be able to experience jnana dassana, or seeing the Dhamma, having the Dhamma eye, or to have the understanding of uh, just looking at things and seeing how they come to be. Yata bhutang pajanati, Lord Buddha says. To be able to do that, we have to have a body that is, as best as our abilities could allow, and the situations, the health and all that, in place, but then coming back to it. Lord Buddha attained Buddhahood because he was also practicing anapanasati to connect to the body, but he didn't stop there. Remember the 4 postures I mentioned. These are just generalizations that Lord Buddha wanted to simplify for us. But basically, he was saying all of the physical postures and activities that your body goes through, bring your mindfulness there. Bring your sati there. Sati. And that brings us to yoniso manasikara. Whatever we pay our attention to, that becomes our reality. And our reality is, therefore, whatever we are mostly concerned about. We're not concerned about the body in that sense. We're trying to preserve it. Just like a person who doesn't eat so that he can save money, so that he can have a better future. Meanwhile, he's starving himself and their loved ones. That's what we call miserliness or stinginess. For some later future date, which they will never taste. But why? We don't need that. That's stupid. So, in this fathom-long body means utilizing every capacity we have within this life of ours to live smart, to be wise. Yes, protect the body. Yes, taking all the necessary measures that are under your control, but not losing yourself, not losing your humanity, not losing the appreciation of life as to why is it that I'm preserving this body in the first place. I've seen people this past year especially who have lost their humanity and they have become a slight shadow of the person they used to be. And they're unrecognizable. And their excuse is, well, I have to protect myself, so that's why I'm being a jerk. They don't say the last part, but that's what they are becoming towards each other, their loved ones. And everyone else is reflecting this. We have a humanity that has lost its humanity today. Things don't pinch us as badly as it used to. I remember a time when people were very careful in showing or saying things that were harsh, that are jolting, that are shocking. Now they don't even have that impact because we've become normalized, we've become used to it. And now we need something even worse to shock us. But we don't have to. Because we have the biggest shocker there is. We have aging and death waiting for us in this body. If we even convince ourselves that we somehow are going to live forever by keeping myself healthy or whatever. So using this body to taste the Dhamma. Take your mindfulness with you wherever you go. Hold the hand of your sati wherever you go. Because if you don't have sati, all the puja that you give, you do, means nothing. It's a joke. The same with sila. Some people are very good with their sila, at least on the outside. I constantly remind students, please, when you're practicing sila, don't do it for me, don't do it for the Buddha, don't do it for anyone other than your own sanity, for your own peace, and for your heart to feel comfortable and tranquil, because you don't have the remorse that, oh my, I broke a precept. So it's important for us to come back and really appreciate in the presence of sati, wherever you go. So if you're sitting, lying down, going to sleep, eating your food, or meditating, sitting down, or standing, just observe. Or you can ask this very simple question: what is my attitude? What is my attitude? But especially when you find yourself really held up with some worry, some fear. Oh my God, what's going to happen? Something like that, if you feel like that. Drop down into your shoes. Okay? Drop down into your shoes. And if someone asks what you're doing, and you can say, this strange Bhante somewhere said, drop down to my shoes. That's what I'm doing. Okay, what does that mean? Wiggle your toes while you're standing or while you're sitting. That simple yet very effective action can bring you down from the psychological worries and everything else from dukkha into sukha. Many people forget how sati, if it's proper sati, meaning samma sati of the Noble Eightfold Path, allows us to reconnect with the body, but at the same time reconnect with the Dhamma. The body is not something we fight in the Dhamma. After all, Siddhartha Gautama He didn't leave the old, useless, ascetic ways and say, well, he was on the verge of death several times before becoming Lord Buddha. But he had the wisdom, the insight, the foresight to say, well, if my body is that weak, how is it going to be able to experience the unconditioned nibbana? Very simple, logical, factual conclusion. So he said, so he was not attached to anything. In the Pachalayamana Sutta, Lord Buddha is encouraging Venerable Mahamoggallana, who is struggling at that time. Venerable Mahamoggallana became an arhat within 1 week's time. But as he was struggling in his meditation, Lord Buddha appears in front of him and he asks, there's a conversation, and Lord Buddha is encouraging him. And Venerable Mahamoggallana asks him this question. He says, Bhante, is there such a thing? Is there a brief instruction you could give us, you could give me right now that I could use, and by relying on it, it's so succinct, it's so full and juicy and compact that it could lead to the unconditioned, as if his teachings were not enough. And Lord Buddha gives him this very brief phrase. He says, Sabbe Dhamma nalang abhinivesaya. What that means is nothing deserves to be clung to. We don't need to latch on to anything. Just like Lord Buddha, before being Lord Buddha, becoming Lord Buddha, as Siddhartha Gautama, he saw that all those 6.5, 7 years of his struggles, that he was so attached to, including those 5 bhikkhus, 5 followers, 5 students of his. So there was some prestige. Oh, I'm their teacher, so I have to keep that image, that, status. I'm risking it otherwise. If I walk away and start eating. He was going on 1 grain of rice a day, remember? Just fathom that if you can. And he said, no, it doesn't matter. He didn't cling to that. In fact, years later, even Venerable Sariputta, as he was fanning Lord Buddha in that heat, summer heat in India, he saw, as Lord Buddha was giving instructions to this young man, that Lord Buddha was not even attached to the Dhamma. Wow! Venerable Sariputta saw that, and because of that seeing, he became an arahant also. So we shouldn't feel like we need to latch on to anything. If it's not the Dhamma, let alone the body. But so long as we inhabit the body, we can use it as a gateway, as an access way to see and live through the Dhamma. Taste the Dhamma. Tasting the Dhamma. When you're practicing Sila, you're also practicing it with the body, There's a few of those precepts that have to do with the body, right? When I'm taking the precept, the training rule not to steal, not to have sexual misconduct. What am I saying? Not to get intoxicated. What am I saying? What would I be using or restraining myself from doing this with? The body. Even when I'm taking the Musavada training rule, with what? What would I be using to lie? The body. So by restraining with mindfulness, suddenly we raise the quality of our life. There's a regalness. There's the nobility. Many so-called noble people or Brahmins used to come thinking that they're noble. You have that in the world today. You have kings and royal, your highness, all that nonsense because they're born in a family. Well, they could have been born as a cockroach or a rat. They just happen to be reborn in Buckingham Palace or somewhere like that. Means nothing. That's not nobility, nor the bank account. Nobility comes from how you carry your body, not because it's imposed from the outside, but it's imposed from the inside out by living a regal life, a noble life. When you're taking the 5 precepts, when it's Uposatha day, when you're taking the 8 precepts, or when you're taking every single step in your life with awareness and mindfulness, with a smile, both on your face and in your heart. What you're doing, you're living the Dhamma. You're appreciating the body, you're appreciating the mind, you're also appreciating the psychology because you're treating the body well. You're treating the body in the truest sense with some dignity and kindness and protecting it. Protection of the body doesn't come from the outside in, it's from the inside out. Who would want to have a body that is so-called healthy but is infested with negative thinking, selfish thinking? You have a lot of people walking around thinking that they're now very well protected. They've taken all the measures, but they're living with stinginess, with ugliness towards each other, saying unwholesome things, even worse, thinking unwholesome things constantly, living their lives in society in an unwholesome way. So that is living the life in adhamma, not dhamma. So if you can just take one single step with awareness during the day, that's such a huge step towards dhamma. In fact, you tasted the dhamma a little bit here, a little bit there. Next time when you're eating food, when you're holding the spoon and you're putting it in your mouth, when you're drinking some tea, can you just be with the tea? Not imagining things. We're not talking about papanchas. We're not mentally proliferating concepts. No, just staying there in the moment. Because life cannot happen in the past nor in the future. Life can only happen here, just like the breath. You cannot breathe in the future. You're not breathing in the past. You're only breathing in the present moment. But what we've been doing is we have been perpetuating suffering. While you're living in the present, you're thinking and worried about the future, and guess what? You already sacrificed the present. And when the future comes and you're going to relive the future the way you lived this present, which is now a past, that's a horrible way of living. That's why you see people being so glum, so stressed out. That's why children, when they run around, if we allow them to nowadays, which I strongly urge people to allow their children to play and be without anything, masks or anything, let them breathe, because that's the only way their immune system is going to work. That's how our ancestors brought us to this 21st century, not with masks. At least when they're children, they have to be exposed to all these elements in nature. That's how we develop immunity. I taught science for over 10 years. No one can argue this. There's a lot of non-science that is being promoted as science, by the way, and we just gulp it down. We just never question anything. We have to be cognizant. We have to do our due diligence and never lose our common sense. And today, humanity has lost its common sense. And the best way to regain our common sense is to come back to this body. What am I doing to my body? Why am I always lost in my future plans and things? Let me just stay with this walk. I'm walking from the living room to the kitchen. I am on this phone call, or I'm about to call someone, and it's a very important business call, but I'm worried that what might the outcome be and whether it would be something bad. Well, hold on. Why does it have to be something bad? Did I do something wrong? No, I didn't. Okay. So that's good. Imagine, tell yourself a joke. Or remember something beautiful that has happened to you. Maybe the way you hugged your child. Maybe the flowers that you saw, or some painting. Or sometimes I would encourage people to watch something funny, a comedy routine, something that's not vulgar, hopefully. Stand-up comedy, something that will uplift the mind, uplift the heart. And then pick up the phone and call. The person on the other end, the receiving end, they will feel your happiness. They will feel your lightness. Where? In their body. Because why? You have been feeling it in your body. Lord Buddha says in the Dhammapada and elsewhere how he looks around and he smiles to his bhikkhus and his sangha and he says, we are the happy ones. We are the happy ones. After all, that was one of the other reasons why every time bhikkhus went to Pindapada through society, through the villages and cities, people were gravitating towards them because they didn't have this heaviness towards them. They weren't playful. They weren't even engaging with their eyes. You're not allowed to look and say and speak to them when you're doing Pindapada, of course. But there was something light about them. There was a slight smile, appreciation. But most importantly, they were walking in the presence of their mindfulness. They were speaking. They were eating with mindfulness. And in the suttas, you see how people who would observe Lord Buddha carefully, there's one place where they say, how the suttas say, how Lord Buddha would never swallow down a morsel of food, let's say rice, without having had every single grain of rice being touched with mindfulness. He would chew every single grain of rice with mindfulness. And Bhante Nyanananda says, Nibbana was there and is there even at the tip of one's tongue. What a beautiful image. What a beautiful image. So Nibbana happens with the body, not in the absence of it. So we have somehow separated us from the Dhamma because we've already separated ourselves from the bodies. You have scholarly or intellectual Buddhists that have started years ago, centuries ago, and they justified their laziness by calling themselves, oh, I'm a scholar, bhikkhu or something. I've given talks on this here on BMV's Dhamma sharing series in the past, so you can listen to those carefully. But we have this wrong idea, this micchaditti, that is what proper Dhamma is. Nonsense. Absolute adhamma. We've also convinced ourselves that it's all about rites and rituals. Nonsense. When a person becomes a sotapanna, one of the three sangyojanas, the last one, is silabhata paramasa. What does that mean? It means no longer is the person looking at rites and rituals as a way to experience liberation, release, nibbana. There's some value. It helps when you're doing puja if the mindfulness is there, because the key thing here is mindfulness. Because you're checking your cetana, you're checking your intention behind doing this puja, this anumodana. Why am I doing this? What is my attitude? Why am I giving this food or offering? That has to be checked. And the way to check it is always coming back to this, what we call the fathom long body. So that is our headquarters, if you will, to come back to again and again, again and again. That is how we practice sila. And that is how we experience nibbana as we proceed. It is not about intellectual debating. Some people I've seen, they just want to debate. Now, when I give talks or I'm invited somewhere, now I haven't been because it's only Zoom, I always encourage people, are you here to debate? Because I don't waste time. As you've heard Brother Leslie say, for 17 years, if you live in war, you have a different appreciation of life because death can come like that. So there's Sangvega. There needs to be Sangvega in our hearts so we don't take things for granted. So debating this and that is useless ultimately because it doesn't allow you to taste the Dhamma. Adding more knowledge and data, it's like regurgitated vomit. Totally unnecessary ultimately because it doesn't get you close to the Dhamma even, let alone experience the Dhamma. So make things easier for you. Hold the hand of Sati with you wherever you go. And always ask, okay, I'm doing this right now. This is taking so much of my time and concentration and dedication in life. What is my attachment? Am I attached to this? Where is my attention going? Where is manasikara? Manasikara is the attention. Yoniso is taking it to the origin, or radical attention, as Bhante used to say. Wise reflection. Why am I doing this? That's a good question. Always a good question to have. And even when you're sitting, bring your attention back to the body. You don't have to be learning the Tipitaka or the Suttas or the Abhidhamma in order for you to be practicing the Dhamma, okay? That's all Micchaditi. That separates the Dhamma. Many of the Arahants, the Lord Buddhas, didn't know how to read and write, okay? Many of them did not even practice to taste any of the levels, Sotapanna, Sakadagami, Anagami, even an Arahant. But they were fully there. They were inhabiting their body. They were not lost in psychological dilemmas and battling arguments in their minds or worried about the future. Worrying is adhamma. Being present in the body is dhamma. So I will stop here and see if there are any questions. I hope I didn't go over any time restraints or limits. Brother Leslie?
No, Bhante, for once you've kept to time limit, 1 hour.
That's
But
good to know.
yeah, you are sharp, 1 hour exactly. So I think it's very good.
Wonderful.
But sadly, there are no questions. But I see from the audience at the moment. But I have a question personally that I would like to throw at you, Bhante.
Please.
Uh, this is like a devil's advocate sometimes,
Uh-huh.
You mentioned about being in the moment while eating or drinking tea. Could you just expand on that idea? Because uh, just as you were speaking earlier, that if you poke your toe against a side of a cupboard and all your attention is now focused on your toe, or even having a toothache, which is basically what I'm going to get tomorrow. I get the feeling the pain is coming onto my tooth. So just deviating from that, but you mentioned quite clearly just now that you can actually attain some kind of enlightenment if you
Mhm.
have sati while having a meal or even drinking your tea. Could you please explain a little deeper to that?
Of course. We have, unfortunately, this comes from the monastics, the bhikkhus, unfortunately, where commentators have mystified the Dhamma. They've made it otherworldly, just like they made Lord Buddha into this other than, something other than a human being, in the sense that they've uh, made him into this mythical figure in some cultures, in some traditions. So that has an impact of separating us from the reality and immediacy of the Dhamma. And Lord Buddha was the Dhamma. He says so many times, right? So he who sees the Dhamma sees me. He who sees me sees the Dhamma. So, but what that means is he's showing that if you're practicing, you are in the presence of the possibility of release. And that is what Nibbana is. And that is all that the Dhamma is trying to do. Yes, Lord Buddha taught that there is dukkha, but he also taught the other thing. It's remedy, it's antidote, which is Nirodha, which is the Nibbana, which is the Noble Eightfold Path, the Magga, with which you experience Nibbana. So there has been this separation, unfortunately, where we are not able to connect with the simplest things. Many of when you read the Thera Gathas and Theri Gathas, you see so many arahants, and both male and female, the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, talking about the moment of their awakening. Rarely do you see where it was simply while they were sitting. Sometimes they were, but many times they were while they occurred. The Nibbanic experience happened, the release happened, while they were engaged in doing something very menial, something very simple. I forgot whether it was Venerable Patachara, Theri. She she was so present with whatever she was doing with mindfulness, as she reaches over to extinguish her oil lamp. As she extinguishes it, that's where it happens. She becomes an arahant. Now, coming to the food or drinking tea. When we sip some tea, we're not here, are we? It's just very automatic. We're not even thinking. We're just going through the process. We're just like automatons. Just like when we do things or when we say certain things. How many of us can pause and say, why did I just say that? Did I really want to say that? Or why did I do that? I myself have done many things in the past where I was just like, that was completely mindless. Mindless. So there's many aspects to it. However, to try to get closer to your question as best as I can, when you are tasting food, one way to do that is to try to taste the different flavors that you're sensing, your taste buds are collecting the data. You know, Salayatana I mentioned, one of them is the taste. You have a tongue, you can taste. Now, when you're bringing mindfulness in, what you're also doing is you're allowing the mind to be just present with the taste data that's coming in. Same thing with the eyes, same with the ears. So what happens is there's a point of contact. Point of contact. Unfortunately, with many of us, what we do is when the contact happens of the taste on the taste buds of the tongue, there is a series of triggers that happen. And the triggers I mean here are generated by the kileshas. Because with the contact also came what? Feelings. So you stubbed your toe, you're hurt. One time I was in Italy and I was walking and I was staying in this room and I didn't know how the furniture was. I was just trying to situate myself, and so it was unfamiliar territory. So as I was walking, I was barefoot. I hit my toe, my small toe, against the furniture, and it was a very painful experience. To this day, it hurts actually. It was very bad, but it brought me to the present moment very quickly. Of course, it has some bad feelings to it. That's what I want to come back to. So there was a contact, but there was also the feeling. What kind of feeling? Lord Buddha mentioned 3 kinds of feelings, right? Pleasurable, painful, and neutral. Now, when we have, let's say in that example, a painful feeling, immediately we like to latch on to, remember the lobha dosa moha, the kileshas I mentioned? That comes and completely clouds the original contact that took place. It was contact, then there was feeling immediately following, but then we come with, I like this, or I hate this. Why did this happen to me? It always happens to me. See the story? So when you were tasting the tea, for example, and it was, let's say it was too warm, hot, and you burn the tip of your tongue. You go, oh, what happened? So a person who is doing or living life according to the Dhamma is observing what took place prior to it getting to it with practice. This happens with practice, of course, until you get so fast in your sati that you're able to not get to the point of kileshas coming in and ruling the whole experiencing and ruining the experience also. Because even when you're burning the tip of your tongue, that can also be an opportunity for you to awaken. Even when you stub your toe and you feel so bad, pain, Your mind, if it's present, it will still watch what is happening in the mind. And that's where you don't do the asmimana, the conceit of I am. This is me. This was my toe. This is happening to me. Why does this always happen? See? So you don't get into the storyline. You are staying with the body and whatever the experiencing process is doing is happening. From the Udanas, we have the Bahya Sutta, where Lord Buddha spoke with Bahya Daruchirya. And it's such a beautiful teaching, such a beautiful sutta. It's not that long, but the teaching is so short. And Venerable Bahya also became foremost known as the one who gained Nibbana, who experienced Nibbana in the shortest amount of time, given the shortest instruction. And Lord Buddha's paraphrasing him, of course, he says, Bahya, because he had come a long way from Mumbai all the way to Savatthi. And he had been running, just resting at night for a few hours and then getting up and running again to get to Savatthi, because he had the urgency, he had the Sangvega. He was using the body correctly. So he gets there, he's finally comes to the city because they tell him he went to the monastery first. So he goes to the village when Lord Buddha is doing Pindapata, alms collecting. And finally he asks Bhante, please give me a teaching. Lord Buddha initially says no, because his mind is so agitated, Bahya's mind still, because he just ran like, I don't know, maybe a couple of thousand miles. And finally it rests and he says, Bahya, when seeing, just see. Using your example, Brother Leslie, when tasting, just taste. Whether it's your rice, whether it's your favorite meal, whatever it is, whether it's your tea, just stay with the taste. And don't add anything, don't subtract anything with mindlessness. Now, how many of us can do that? Initially, not many, if any. But with practice, we can. We definitely can, and I see this all the time. Where it's like a muscle. Think of it as a muscle. So the more you get into the habit of watching, okay, this is my practice time. Because many of us come up with excuses and reasons why we shouldn't or we can't meditate. Okay, are you eating during the day? At least once. Most lay people eat 3 times a day. Okay, so that's 3 opportunities. And depending on the length of time you dedicate per meal time, that's an opportunity for your eyes to see the plate, the bowl, to see the food, and check your attitude towards the food. Is there greed? Is there lusting after the food? Already, this is a great opportunity for Dhamma to be experienced, because you would be hearing Lord Buddha's teaching to Bahya, but this time to you. When seeing, just see. When tasting, just taste. When feeling something, just feel. Not be attached to it, not be fixated on it, because life is always in a stream. It's a process. It's always happening. You don't hold on to anything. Remember, sabbe dhamma nalang abhinivesaya, nothing is worth to be clung to, latched onto. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be staying with the object as it's happening. As it's happening. And sometimes you see this with children. They're so alive. They're so present when they're playing with the ball or this or running. They're so present. And there's a freshness to it. So absolutely, while you're drinking your tea next time, make it an adventure of awareness. And then you actually really taste the tea, because most of us never actually taste the food we're eating. We are experiencing the lusting after this. So if you're about to have your favorite meal, you're not even tasting the food, You're actually holding on to, yes, you're like, finally. But your taste buds are not even tasting it. Maybe in the beginning, but then your mind takes over and you're lost in how I'm supposed to feel. And usually it also involves memories. Ah, yes, I remember when I first ate this meal and it was amazing. My grandmother made this. I had this here. You're gone into what I call sometimes la la land, away from reality, away from the body. So you don't have to go on a retreat in order for you to be practicing sati. You can practice sati even if you're sitting in the when you're sitting in the bathroom, by the way. Lord Buddha is very clear on this. He says, even while urinating and defecating, you are mindful of what's happening. When you're brushing your teeth, you're mindful. Check. Which hand am I using to brush my teeth with? It's a good way to connect with the body. Or when I'm brushing my teeth, what is my other hand doing? Are you aware of it? Are you standing straight? Is your body balanced? Meaning, is there an equal distribution of your weight on both of your legs, on both of your feet? And what position is my feet in? That's another way you can always check. Every time you feel like you're lost in your worries, see if you can convince yourself to come back to, how are my feet positioned right now? These are very important questions that bring you to the Dhamma. You don't have to be knowing the Abhidhamma or learning the suttas left and right and memorizing things in order for you to think that you're doing the Dhamma, you're practicing. No, those are helpful, of course, but no. When it comes to mindlessness, we need to be mindful first of the body. Check the feet's position. How are my feet positioned? Are they both like this? Is one like this? Or am I on the side? Or is one leg up underneath me? All these curiosities are different gateways, doorways to take us to the Dhamma. Because what happened, what worked with Bahya, who immediately became an Arahant, by the way, he went from the lowest, he attained Sotapanna, Sakadagami, Anagami, and Arahantship very quickly. It's a sudden, but it took a long time for him, because in that life he hadn't been practicing, but in previous lives he had been a bhikkhu, very diligently practicing. So, but as far as we're concerned, just start with your meal. Just start with the way you are. If you take the bus or the train or the commute, or you're on the phone, or you're about to text someone, see if you text every single letter with a drop of sati. If you're drinking some soup, see if every single spoonful has a drop of sati in there, and that will be miraculous. And that is another way of using the body, because when I say the body, it's also the six senses, of course. Sixth one being the mind. We need to be present. Otherwise, we're not present to life. We're just sleepwalking through life. And most of us, 8 billion people, we're sleepwalking through life. And it's such a shame to waste this rare human birth, this opportunity. We have 8 billion humans, but we don't have 8 billion human beings living the lives of humans. And there's a dignity that is lost there. Mindfulness doesn't mean just this new catchphrase that we see around everywhere in the world, but it's deeper than that. It's dignifying one's life. It's making us more human, more beautiful, happier beings. So I hope that was able to answer or address your question, Brother Leslie.
Thank you, Bhante. I think that was excellent explanation and guidance. And I think it's also a knee jerk for most of us, because I think we go through life, as you say, dreaming. From the time we wake up, we are really not really in the present. We're just like brushing your teeth. You don't even. It's a habit. It's you don't even know you're doing it. And then go for breakfast. You don't even realize you're having breakfast, because it's just something you do on a daily basis. Then you just go to work, or whatever it is. You don't use this opportunity to actually practice sati. I think it's amazing. It's a very good advice, Bante. One more question from me before we go to the audience. What about those armchair meditators, guys who are lazy to be really meditating? What advice do can you give them? I'm actually one of them. I'm actually an armchair meditator myself. So, what good advice can you give us, Bante?
uh, take the Dhamma away from the cushion. Take it with you wherever you go. Don't let it end and start and end on the cushion. That is where the fun begins. That is where you actually can taste the Dhamma. Lord Buddha in the Anguttara Nikaya, in the Book of the Fives, he says how there's 5 ways that a person can taste Nibbana. The first one is to listen to the Dhamma. Listen, not just hear, but listen. That's one of the reasons why I've been retranslating and recording and narrating the suttas. So if you'd like, please go and not just the ones that I made. It's freely available for posterity. I'm still working on the Anguttara Nikaya. I'm going to get to the Samyutta Nikaya before I die, I hope. So, but anyhow, listening, it's so important and powerful. So Lord Buddha says, through listening to the Dhamma, one can become even an arahant. Second is while teaching the Dhamma. Third is while we are repeating the Dhamma. While we have taken something and we're repeating, let's say, some of the phrases that I said today, like yatha bhutang pajanati, or nothing is worth to be clung to, etc., etc. And we have so many verses of Lord Buddha. You don't have to know entire suttas, basically. That's what I'm saying. The fourth one is when the person is pondering these principles and teachings while they're sitting or engaged in life. And then the fifth one is when you're sitting and meditating. That's the fifth occasion where Nibbana occurs. So I wanted to briefly say that because many people think that it only happens as a result of, or during rather, the sitting practice. Well, what happens to the rest of the time? It's very similar to, as a clinician, for example, people would come and say, or because you would meet the patient once a week, let's say, unless it's a crisis case where you have to meet them more than once, perhaps. But it's usually about an hour as a psychotherapist working with the patient. So sometimes they would come and I would tell them, come back to the next session, and I say, did you do this? Did you do this? Whatever I instructed you, gave you, suggestions and tools. Did you apply any of these? And they say, no. I say, okay. So you mean to say that this 1 hour, almost 1 hour, is going to be equivalent to 6 days and 23 hours of you completely forgetting about whatever we discussed here? That's what we do. A person might be sitting for 1 hour meditating. That's good, fine, but it's not as important as what that meditation could turn into if they take it with them during the rest of the 23 hours of the day. That's why Lord Buddha did not want to keep any gaps there. He even said, while you're urinating and defecating, I mean, can it be more blunt, more direct, more related with real life? So, as we've all been there, the armchair meditator, because there's a certain aura around it. There's a certain idea or mystique about it. But it's nothing like, it doesn't have to stay like that. That's what I'm trying to say. So let us create this lightness in our approach and be less rigid. And yes, there's been a lot of teachers who've been promoting such very austere, serious approach to the Dhamma. That you have to know this, you have to know this, and you have to do this. And it's very regimented, and it has less and less of humanity to it. When you are looking at your loved ones, when you're looking at your children, for example, or your parents, how are you looking at them? It's almost like acting for many people when they are meditating, doing the armchair meditation routine. Just like I would say to those patients, I would always urge people to not take it for granted and definitely not turn it into a cold, lifeless habit. Lifeless habit. Because oftentimes when we are that serious with our sitting meditation, that can turn into attention being built. It's like tightening, like a spring. And all of a sudden, when the meditation time comes up for you to get up, you go, oh, thank you, I'm out. Where did all that effort go? What was that? That's no samma vayama. That's no right effort. You just were practicing discipline. That's what I say sometimes. I have very strong positions about things, and some people don't appreciate my positions that well, but my loyalty is to whatever is true, whatever is Dhamma, and whatever is not Dhamma, I will call it out. Many people today go to these 10-day retreats, like Goenka retreats and other retreats, not just Goenka, but other retreats as well around the world, and they've become very, very popular. And I've been to several of these myself in the past. And I always look at the behavior of the person before and after the sit. I'm looking at my behavior, but I'm also observing others, which is our responsibility as individuals. So you would see that there is not any personality change, transformation to the better taking place in the person because of this individual doing this retreat. What is happening is the person is having more and more willpower to push themselves through the pain. Yes, I sat through a 10-day retreat. Yes, I sat through 1 month of this. Yeah, but how is that affecting the quality of your life and how you treat yourself and others? I've seen people using bad words, even though they have done many, many of these retreats. Some people might be called even like old students, and they have these different categorizations. They use curse words. They drink alcohol. They do drugs. Their behavior is deplorable when they are not in meditation. But when you're there in meditation, what does that mean? So even if a bhikkhu is meditating, it's not against any one particular group. I don't want it to come across like that. It's against ignorance. It's against ignorance. And ignorance doesn't care what robes you're wearing or whether you are wearing robes or not, or whether, no, ignorance is there. And it's our job to identify it in us first. So this is crucial for us because it's important to identify if we are on the path of Dhamma or Adhamma. So the very question that you asked indicates the presence of wisdom there to even ask such a question. Because you know that there is not this sense of fulfillment. There's something missing. Many people sit while they're debating in their head. They have no samma vacha, no proper wholesome right speech. And they don't have the proper mindfulness technique. They definitely don't have samma samadhi. So These have everything to do with the rest of the 23 hours, presuming that you're sitting 1 hour. Because I've seen people who have sat even for 6 hours, 10 hours a day in one stretch. But then you see them afterwards and you're eager to see some wondrous qualities in them. Come on, he sat for 2, 3 hours, 6 hours. So he must really be close to Nibbana. The attitude has to be checked. So, short answer to your question, always ask the question, what is my attitude with which I'm sitting? Do I want to get something from this? Am I eager to attain Nibbana? Am I fighting something? Am I wanting something? What is that? Lobha. Remember the kileshas? The first one. In that sense, most of us, even though we are armchair or not meditators, when we take tisarana, when we're taking the refuge, in reality, what we're taking refuge in are the kileshas. We say, Lobang saranang gacchami, dosang saranang gacchami, mohang saranang gacchami. That's what we're saying. In reality, because it's not just the words, that's lip service again. Trust the behavior, and behavior of the mind is number one. But even outsiders can look at your body and how you're living your through your body and know whether you have Dhamma in your heart and not. But even that is secondary. I'd like to know that for myself. I want to feel, because it's those mini, small Nibbana moments that eventually the mind gets habituated to them and it becomes more and more and more and more vast until your whole life is sati. Your whole life is all about the Dhamma. Many people think that Nibbana is like that doorway you enter and now you have Nibbana. So you don't have to struggle anymore. And it's like, no. Nowhere in the suttas, nowhere do you find that. The person, meanwhile, is training themselves with every sitting, but every step also away from the cushion. They are training themselves. And that is what's building. That is what's building and the capacity in the person to really one day experience that release, full release. But in the meantime, they are releasing themselves in these small, small processes that are taking place, thanks to the presence of the mind and thanks to knowing what attitude they are practicing with. So always check, what is my attitude? Remember, Lord Buddha said in the Atangika Magga, the Noble Eightfold Path, the second one is Samma Sankappa. What is that? Right intention. What is my Chaitana? What is my volition? What is my compass directed to? This comes after Samma Ditti, of course, but once you have Samma Ditti, you need to know it's not just a decision or the resolution or the determination to push through that sit. That's good, but that's only a small portion. I have to check my intention. Why? Do I want to steal something from this 1 hour? Yes, I got into a jhana. Yes. What attitude is that? Where's the Dhamma there? It's nothing. I mean, how is that different than somebody stealing something? Or pushing yourself, not saying the truth to a boss in a workplace simply to get a raise. And you get the raise and you say, yes, but you lied. You did things that you would never want your children to do, but you did those to get your raise. So how is that wholesome? How's that Dhamma? I don't see a difference between that and an armchair meditator who has intentions like that. So check your attitude would be my shortest answer to that.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you for the excellent replies to my questions. We have about another 4 or 5 questions, and we've already done about 1.5 hours. So, Bhante, I will now pop the question onto the screen, and you just time yourself accordingly.
Okay. Does it then mean we can't talk while eating? If it's necessary, of course, you have to talk. It's not a somber, very serious, gloomy affair, especially if you're sitting with people and you care, or family members. The important thing is, just like I was mentioning earlier about checking your intention. Most oftentimes when we're talking or about to talk, it's coming from greed. If you feel like that tension build up and it's like, I have to let go, I have to say it, I have to say it, I have to say it. Ask yourself, why do I have to say it? Really? Is it the end of the world if I don't say it? If I say it, well, what happens then? What these two things mean, you eating and the desire coming in for wanting to speak, they usually come from a point of running away from what is happening. There's attachment there. There's lusting after things. There's running away. Stay with it. Stay with it. Maybe by you saying this word that you want to say, might actually be coming from a desire to break the silence. Some people can't stand the silence. They feel uncomfortable. They have to say something. Why? Why do I have to say something? Sometimes you have to say it, and then go ahead and say it. But my invitation is, always ask, is it necessary? Is what I'm about to say coming from a place of love? Is it true what I'm about to say? So is it necessary? Is it true? Is it coming from a place of love? Is it going to help the person in any way? Is it something bad about someone else? Am I gossiping, basically? And if it's about someone else, ask yourself, would I say this if that person was here, sitting here with us? If it's gossip, usually we would go, I won't say it. Why? What happened? Well, because he's here, she's here, I can't say it. So you see, all these intricacies. So it's not a matter of saying or talking. Of course, you can talk while you're eating, but don't be so rigid. So it's not like, don't do this, do this. That's not Dhamma. That's not Buddhism. We use wisdom. We use common sense. If it's necessary, say it. But before saying it, check, where am I coming from? Am I running away from tasting this food? Even while you're tasting, even if you don't say it, your mind might be going 1,000 or 100,000 miles a second, but definitely not with the food you're eating. So there's that danger as well. So always check. So it's not a matter of yes or no, don't, yes, no. If you need to talk, talk, but not at the sacrifice of something else. And that something else is the calm and tranquility of your mind. That's ultimately what we're going for. So I hope that was able to answer your question. Dear Bhante, when in much physical pain, do I continue maintaining mindfulness of my breathing, or should I focus on the pain method like some of the meditation techniques taught, and the pain will eventually subside? Thank you. There is a place for the awareness of pain. By the way, Lord Buddha never, ever said, go ahead and note, let's say, I'm walking, I'm walking, or painting, or something like that. What he said is pajanati. The person knows if there's this, if they're walking, or if there's pain. You're not ignoring, you're aware of it. Now, as far as staying with the breath, there is this thing called a subterfuge where, just like children, let's say if a child is playing with something and dangerous, so you come in and you want to take that away from them, let's say matches or a lighter or something, or a sharp object. If you take it away, they're going to start screaming, or they might hurt themselves. So one of the smart things to do is give them something else and say, oh, look at this, and they automatically would let go of the other thing and take this. So it's very similar to that. Now, sometimes it's very strong pain, and it's not willing to go away. Now, of course, if you have medication to take and the doctor's given them to you for that, and the pain is there, go ahead, please listen to your physician, the doctor, your general practitioner. But there are times when pain is there. Now, the last thing you want to do is run away from it and not learn from it. This is especially in the context of meditation, by the way. Now, there is such a thing that is result of sloth and torpor, or just boredom, tinhamidha. And what that means is basically it's a hindrance, it's a nivarana that comes in and usually takes the shape of a physical manifestation. And because the moment you get up, this knee or this leg or your back that was hurting incredibly bad, suddenly you get up and it's gone. That is the product of nivaranas, the hindrances. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't the other kind, legitimate kind of pain, meaning you really feel the pain, like you get up and you walk and you feel the pain still there. So there isn't a point in sitting through the pain, but at the same time, we're not suppressing it either. Remember, this is called the Majjhima Pada, the path of middle path. What that means is we don't lean on either extremes. We stay in the middle and we make the most of this, in this case, the pain. So it's important, if you have developed your practice to be evolved enough, if you can maintain the tranquility of mind and still experience the pain, this takes time, to go ahead and look at the pain, but in the sense of your relationship to the pain, meaning my attachment. In normal language parlance, what I'm saying is, do I like what is happening? In the case of the pain, we say normally, no, I hate this pain. That becomes your object of meditation. So in those moments, you don't need to be practicing just the breath, because that becomes one-pointed meditation, focused meditation, which doesn't leave room for you to experience any insights. Okay? There's no panya that's coming out. It's like I was saying earlier about, determination. That becomes just a matter of, I pushed through and I was able to sit for the other 2 hours or something. But how? How did you sit? Where was the mind? It was like this. How good is that meditation? You didn't learn anything. Your ego just got boosted, that's all. So wiser thing would be at that moment to switch. If the pain is that much and you really need to sit, let's say for some reason, go ahead and switch from the breath into your attitude. Now, of course, we have the satipatthana. So the first is the breath meditation, right? Or the body, related to the body meditation. So what I'm suggesting is to switch to the feeling, Vedananupassana, at that moment. Some teachers would say, no, go straight into Chittanupassana. Depends on the person. And that's why it's good to have a teacher that you can work with and can calibrate what would be best suited for you. So Vedananupassana would be checking my attitude towards this pain, because there's feeling, obviously, right? So pain is a bad feeling. It's a painful feeling. Here is where you can practice the Chittanupassana, where you can look at your heart's or your mind's quality, if there's attachment to this painful feeling, meaning attachment also is resistance. I don't want this. Why is this happening? That resistance is hate. That's another word for dosa or vyapada. So eventually, as the practice grows, you apply the Dhammanupassana and you're looking at the actual hindrances that are showing up, for example, in response to the physical pain. And if you go deeper and deeper, you also can look at it in the form of the context of the 5 aggregates, the Pancha Upadana Khandas, the 5 grabbing aggregates. Maybe, usually there is, by the way, I'm just saying maybe, but the person will see that there is this grabbing desire of, this is my body. I want to protect it. I don't want anything bad. What is that? That's coming from ignorance. So you see, you're now practicing vipassana. So you didn't use the breath as a way to kind of suffocate, to kill the pain, because there's pain, it's an opportunity to teach us something. Now, I'm not saying advocating for, yeah, go ahead and sit with the pain. No, sometimes it's difficult for us to just ignore the pain. And that is a great opportunity to practice insight and not run from it. So I hope that's helping you, that suggestion. Dear Bhante, as we get older, should we learn to meditate on Maranasati? Can Bhante briefly explain how meditation on death should be done? Thank you. Wonderful question. I wouldn't say just when we are getting old, because as I was mentioning to another student today, I even maybe today also here in this Dhamma sharing, but to grow old is a luxury. Not many people have that, and or are having that. Many children are dying as children. They never get to even be teenagers, let alone 20-year-olds or even older. So I advocate, I support individuals who are much more commonsensical and realistic. Realists, basically, even with children, preparing them for an understanding and appreciation of death, not to be afraid of it. So that's a thing which is crucial first to understand about Maranasati. In our culture, especially in the Western dominated culture, which is spreading everywhere, there is this fear of death, running away from death. That is not appreciating death. If you appreciate life, then we need to also appreciate death, because they complement each other. Okay. What I mean by that is we appreciate death through the life that we're living, the bodies that we have. I remember when I was in Nepal, I was taken to this huge Hindu temple. It's apparently one of the biggest, most important Hindu shrines in the world. And there in the back, they were conducting cremations. So it was a charnel ground. So you saw the human bodies in different stages of their cremation, and the smells and the sights and all these things. That could be one way of practicing Maranasati. Now, why though? Why? Not just, as I said, not just when a person is growing older. Also, when a person is too infatuated, obsessed about keeping the body healthy, obsessed about having a long life, and being a prisoner to that, a slave to it. One of the best ways that Lord Buddha has used to disengage us from such a decrepit and attached way of living, meaning it's fearful living, because you're always afraid, oh my, I don't want to die. I don't want to get sick. I don't want to get sick. Something that about 8 billion of us are obsessed with today for some reason. That's why I was jokingly saying, nobody's getting out of here alive, Nobody. So when you practice Maranasati, if you're doing it right, you are actually being a realist, first of all. Your feet are concretely like on the ground. You're solid. Why? Because you're appreciating this other aspect of life. Death is an aspect of life. So when we are infatuated or so stuck on this body and keeping it, preserving it, becoming aware of the body dying, whether through pictures. Now, many in the modern world, it's very difficult. It's to find a place where, unless where you live, there is such a place, to find charnel grounds. So, but we have digital media. We have, for once, we can actually use YouTube and the websites and things for our own advantage, not to indoctrinate us and not to tell us what to believe. The way it is run, that's what it's happening with Facebook, YouTube, and the news, especially the mass media, mainstream media. They are pulling us away from realism and what is really happening in the world. So that is on us. It's our due diligence that is required. One of the best ways to do that is practice Maranasati. Okay. Looking at pictures sometimes is the first step towards putting yourself in this, because it can be shocking for many of us. Sometimes a person might be stuck with that image for a few days, and they might really be shaken up, and not in a good way. So we have to ease our way into it. So that is how I would approach answering your question. So then you could say, from a 2D image, from just a picture to a video. I once saw on YouTube a cremation process, how the body, they put it, and mortician was taking the body and this and that, and then they put it in the cremation, or etc. Or look at videos of, in Tibet, for example, the deceased is taken to this place where there are these individuals who are specialized in taking the body, and not to be so gruesome because some viewers might not be open to this, so I don't want to shock them. So basically, these individuals get rid of the body and cutting it into pieces, and then vultures come. The vultures are there. They come and strip the body from its flesh, and what is left is the bone, and then they crush the bones and turn them into powder and give them the ashes so they don't have ashes. So the powdered bone material, they give them back to the families, because they don't have wood there in Tibet, so culturally. So you have these. So, but you don't have to be there. That's what I'm trying to say. So you can watch it through videos also. Something that I used to do decades ago. My mother died when I was much younger. I was 21, 22 barely. And so that was a major eye-opening experience. So since then, every time I would hear about someone having died, let's say a neighbor's grandmother or somebody, I would go there. And if I knew the person or distant relative or something, I would become a pallbearer. I would volunteer. So I would go and hold the casket. So they didn't have much cremation. They don't have that in that culture. So they would bury the dead. So I would be close to the dead person as possible, meaning I would be the pallbearer holding the person, only less than a foot away from the actual body inside this box, this casket. So that was simply for me to prepare my mind to disengage from this attachment to the body, the world that we live in. Make money, do this, get healthy, take care of the body, look good, enjoy life. All that could change in a millisecond when you are in a car accident, or you die, basically, or you lose your legs, for example, forever. So these calculated, shocking instances are wonderful medicine to help you to come back to what is really important, what is really happening. So Maranasati is one of the best meditations to disengage us from living in a Disney type of a world, which this life now is promoting. Maximization of pleasure, minimization of pain, all that nonsense. And plus, last week in the second portion of the Maranasati talk I gave with the meditators, which is on YouTube, by the way, all of these are on YouTube, under my channel, Candana Bhikkhu, on YouTube, if you, Candana without an H, as you see here. There, I addressed the 9 charnel ground meditations, which come from the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, as I was covering for 3 weeks. So the middle part, the second part of this 3-part series, was dedicated to that Maranasati. So that's also the first one you also have on the aspects of it as well. So I hope that helps.
Okay, Bhante, we have about we're coming to almost 2 hours since first
Oh,
started. Bhante, can we take one last question before
sure,
we end? Yeah.
sure. Dear Bhante, I hope you don't mind me indulging in this question. On the contemplation of the 32 parts of the body, I wanted to find out how each part looks like from the internet. Okay. However, I discovered that the general count is 78 organ parts. May I know why are the other parts left out? They're not left out, I would say. In fact, there might be even more than 78. I used to teach biology. I was a high school biology teacher, AP, advanced placement. So uh, uh, you have to also think in context, and not just when you're reading the Dhamma suttas. When we say 32, some might even say 31. I've come across people saying that. These are just numbers to delineate the different sections of the body, because where is when a person is looking at the body as a whole, identifying with it, versus Lord Buddha coming around and saying it's the body is like a person who's holding a bag with two openings, one opening on each side, and inside the opening there's different kinds of grains: sesame seeds, mung beans, rice, different grains, etc., etc. And you're opening both ends and you're letting it spill, and you're looking at each of these and you're identifying, oh, these are the chickpeas, those are the sesame seeds, those are the kidney beans, those are the... So the whole objective is not the number. Please be mindful of that. We don't care about the number. What we care about is what is being said, what is being done, in fact, by the meditator. Even if you see a few of those, let's say the kidneys, let's say somebody who has an attachment or feeling very attracted to the opposite sex, for example, or having a hard time getting the image of some seductive image from their mind about a person. Okay. One of the best ways to deflate that, or to make that seduction disappear, is you look at that person's well, given the nature of the question, I will ask you to indulge here. Does this person have a bladder? How about intestines? You see where I'm going? Penetrate through the clothing, into the body, into the bladder, and it's full of what? Urine. This very seductive person, very seductive, attractive, whatever you want to call it. They also have poop in their bodies, in their intestines. They're not made out of plastic. They're a real human being with 32 parts or 78 parts. Who cares? As bhikkhus, we during our ordination, the upajjhaya, the preceptor, gives us the 5. He doesn't go through all the 32. If they want to, of course they can, but ultimately, any of these, just thinking about this, kesa loma nakadanta tacho. Kesa is the head hair. As they are shaving the head of the samanera, you see the hair on your palm, or you see it on the ground. That was part of me. What happened? Oh, they're all around me. What happened? Well, that is the person's attachment that is coming apart slowly, slowly. So you use it as a meditation tool. So please don't be literally taking these numbers. I would encourage you when it comes to things like this. So, because that can be a deterrent for some meditators, because they get confused, understandably. And you don't have to be confused, because you need to look at what is being said. What is the objective? Lord Buddha didn't care about these numbers. Remember, there's a sutta where Venerable Ananda and a carpenter are having an argument, because Venerable Ananda is saying Lord Buddha taught that there's this many feelings. Earlier I was saying 3, And the other one's saying, Lord Buddha said there's three kinds of feelings. So they go back and forth and they say the only person who's going to solve this is Lord Buddha. So they go to Lord Buddha and they say, Bhante, he's saying this is how many feelings you said, you taught us. And he's saying, or I'm saying, there's this many. Which is it? And Lord Buddha says, I have given instructions in the past where I said there's three kinds of feelings. And I've also said there's, 12 or 18 or 36 or even 108 or even more types of feelings. So you see from there how it's not the number, it is what you can extract from the gist of it. Just imagine the bag with the two openings. Each of the openings represents something. One is the anus, the other one is the mouth. So all of these two are like the bag, isn't it? So if you can just think about the blood, if you can just think about the inside, because this very, very thin skin has convinced us that there's nothing underneath it. What a joke. What a joke. What a deception. If you peel the skin, you have veins, you have arteries, you have bones, you have fat. So I would approach it like that instead of being so fixated on the numbers, and continue your meditation. Even if you have just one of these 78 or 32 is already, if you can just go there, because your job is to remove yourself from being fixed on whatever is observable, taking the skin for granted. No, penetrate it, go deeper. You might find more than 78, so don't be fooled by whatever the internet or is saying. Look at the objective of this meditation, this very powerful practice, the 32 parts. So I hope that was helpful.
Thank you, Bhante. It was an excellent sharing this evening. We have almost hit 2 hours again, as always.
I think our record has been over 2 hours, I think, almost two and a half.
The last time was 2.5, Bhante. Yeah. But the topic is still very relevant, and I think was also very enlightening for many, because I noticed even after 2 hours, we still have about 60 people following us constantly throughout. So as I also mentioned, for those of you who would like to have more questions posed to Bhante, you can reach Bhante at this email address, bhantechandana@gmail.com. I'm sure Bhante, when his time, will reply to you when time permits, because Bhante is always very busy. And I also mentioned, I think the last time, and also I would like to mention it today, Bhante is doing excellent work there in Hawaii. Even though he's alone, he doesn't operate from a temple, he operates from an apartment, and he has to take care of his expenses on his own. So if you would like to help Bhante to expand his global missionary work, please help him out at www.paypal.me/chandanambiku. I think Bhante will really appreciate your assistance financially as well. So we've come to the end of this evening's Dhamma sharing. Bhante, would you like to do the Anumodana?
Yes, of course. Akasatha chabumata devanaga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu lokasasanam. Akasatha chabumata devanaga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu desanam. Akasatha chabumata devanaga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu mam paranti. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find health relief. May all beings share in these merits that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of wholesome happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share in these merits of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, Sadhu.
Thank you, Bhante. So we've come to the end of another exciting, excellent Dhamma sharing. And I think many of us really appreciated your time, Bhante. I think it must be now at 4:30 in Hawaii in the morning. Yeah,
4:35.
4:35. So no sleep
Yeah,
for you again another night. Thanks to Buddhist Mahavihara.
of course.
So on behalf of the Committee of Management and the monks of the Buddhist Mahavihara, let me take this opportunity to thank you, Bhante, for graciously accepting our invitation to speak this evening, and to also to our sponsors this evening to ensure that this Dhamma sharing can proceed as always, and to our listeners, many of you who stayed up all 2 hours of Bhante's the sharing this evening. I think there was almost 55 to 60 of us who stayed up to listen to Bhante. So which means, Bhante, you have a good following around the world at this point. And so please, as I mentioned, if you could support Bhante in his work, in the excellent sharing and his work, please support him at the addresses I mentioned earlier. So with that, we've come to the end of this evening's Dhamma sharing. So have a pleasant evening, one and all, and Sukhi Hotu.
Kyoto.